What's up guys, Sean here, and today we have some updates on the Erica Thomas case, and we're going to go over the Snopes article where they decided not to fact check Erica Thomas's claims, but instead they spent their time fact checking a joke made by a satirical website about the Erica Thomas claims. So quickly, I want to recap the Erica Thomas case. If you want more details about that case, click the iCard in the top or the link in the description box to see my full video on the case thus far. But I'm going to give you a quick run through so we can get to where we are and go over some of the updates and the Snopes article. Erica Thomas is a Democratic state representative in the state of Georgia. She alleged that while at a Publix grocery store, an angry white man who was evil, racist, and white approached her in the express line and started yelling at her and then told her to go back to her country.
Because people are getting really out of control with this. With this white privilege stuff. I'm at the grocery store and I'm in the 10 aisle. The aisle that says 10 items or less. Yes, I have 15 items. This white man comes up to me and says, "You lazy son of a bitch." He says, "You lazy son of a bitch. You need to go back where you came from."
This became a national news story because the events of this story mirrored a narrative that the media was already pushing about Trump's tweets about the squad and how that would impact his supporters, sending them after minorities. So this checked all of the boxes for the media and they ran with it. Now this story gained so much traction in the national media that Erica Thomas decided to hold a press conference in the parking lot of the Publix where she alleged this incident occurred. However, the press conference didn't go exactly as she planned, as the guy she accused of being an evil white racist decided to show up to the press conference and tell his side of the story. And it turns out this guy was not an evil white racist Trump supporter. He's a lifelong Democrat who was actually criticizing the Trump tweets in question that supposedly inspired him the week before this story broke. He's also Cuban and not white.
Her words stating on Twitter in her video, stating I told her she needs to go back where she came from, are untrue. I am Cuban, I am not white.
And for those of you who think he is white and a Cuban, that's not the case in the United States of America. You see, a long time ago in the history of this country, Hispanic Americans were actually not allowed to sue for racial discrimination because under United States law, they were considered legally white. However, during the Civil Rights era, it was ruled that people could no longer consider Hispanics white for legal purposes because they would use that to say that they couldn't sue for racial discrimination because they were in fact legally white. That's why on almost every US Census form, when they ask you what your race is, the white category usually has an addendum that says white non-Hispanic, because in the United States of America, for legal reasons, since the Civil Rights era, Hispanics are considered different from white people in terms of being a protected class. So it's not unusual for Hispanics within the United States of America to not consider themselves white, and in terms of legality in the United States of America, Hispanics are not white. Now, as pointed out in my last video, after Thomas was confronted with the man that she was lying about, she then continued her interview, and in her continued interview, she all of a sudden got really fuzzy about whether or not this person said go back to your country or go back where you came from. And considering that is the crux of the story, like literally it is not a story without him actually saying that, the fact that all of a sudden she's walking it back tells us all that she is not telling the truth about this story, because that's what it is.
I don't want to say he said go back to your country or go back to where he came from, but he was making those types of references is what I remember.
You need to go back where you came from.
I don't want to say he said go back to your country or go back to where he came from, but he was making those types of references is what I remember.
Now, although I didn't mention it in my last video, these weren't the only red flags in Erica Thomas's story. For one, she is significantly larger than the man in question, and during the course of the press conference, she is clearly way more aggressive than he is. So in order for this story to be true, they would have had to have been acting exactly opposite the way they're acting in front of the cameras, which isn't impossible. I would just consider it unlikely.
Everybody needs to see this man that did this to me. And he thinks that he gets a 5 minutes of fame. You think that you're going to come up when you see police, when you see SB 46, you think you're going to come up here and get a spotlight? No, you're not.
Also, Thomas repeatedly accuses him of seeking camera time so he can get his 5 minutes of fame, when she's the one who's holding the press conference, and he could have just remained anonymous and not shown up. If he was legitimately the aggressor in the store, and there is videotape from within the store, and there are witnesses from within the store, it would be a horrible decision for him to show up to a press conference and show his face in front of all these cameras when he could have easily remained anonymous. But when you go over the statements from the two witnesses that worked at the Publix, their stories align with his story way more than it aligns with Thomas's story. And when you look at the surveillance video, which I'll put on screen for you now, you can see that Thomas isn't this woman cowering in fear of an evil racist white man who is both evil, racist, and white. She looks very aggressive. And in fact, in one of the most ironic twists this story could have ever produced, according to her, she yelled at him, this Cuban American, that he should go back.
You just don't remember the exact phrase. No, definitely not. But I know it was go back, because I know I told him go back. Because I know after he told me, I said you go back.
So if anyone is playing into harmful stereotypes and anti-immigrant sentiment, it is the woman telling a Cuban American to go back where he came from, not the guy telling his state representative that she has too many items to be on the express line. But the story gets better than that, because it turns out this is not the only time Erica Thomas has tried to manufacture victimhood by claiming that she was the victim of racism. She had previously accused the West End Hotel of refusing to take her order in favor of taking the order of two other Caucasian people, and then having the pool boy come over and ask her for her room key. Of course, according to her, the reason she was skipped over and somebody demanded her room key from her is because she's African American, and the reason they didn't ask those two white people is because they were white. But here's the thing. If you take somebody's order in a hotel like the West End Hotel, you have to bill the order. And hotels like that bill the order to the room. So the idea that they took some other people's orders and didn't ask them for their room key is ridiculous, because they would have had to have billed them. And if they didn't ask those two white people for their room key, but they asked Thomas for her room key in an ordering situation, then that means they could not have possibly taken the order of those white people, and they were likely taking her order. But the hits keep on coming for Thomas, because even though we all can see on video Thomas backtracking on the key allegation that makes this a news story, she has decided to retain counsel and demand that this guy be prosecuted for a crime.
He definitely needs to be brought up on charges.
You just said you want to see him in jail.
Oh, definitely. He can't just walk free. Whether it's because I was pregnant, whether it's because I was black, whether it's because whatever he did, it doesn't matter.
Now, what crime does she want him prosecuted for? I'm assuming nothing, because even if her story was 100% true and wasn't contradicted by two witnesses at the Publix, by the video surveillance that shows her being the aggressor towards him and him leaving the store, and he said exactly what she accused him of saying, that would not be illegal. But according to her and her attorney, it is illegal for a man that she thinks is white, even though legally he is not, to intimidate her and make her fear for her life.
This individual violated Georgia law by placing her in reasonable fear of receiving a violent injury. That is a crime in this state. He also did it in the presence of a child, which is also a crime in this state.
That's right. This woman who towers over this very small man, this woman seen in the surveillance video chasing this very small man out of the store, is saying that this man was intimidating her and intimidated her so much that a reasonable person could have considered that a threat to her life and her safety. Now, it's important to emphasize that this woman is clearly lying. However, even if she wasn't, her irrationally fearing for her life after somebody she chased out of the store left the store doesn't make that person that she chased out of the store a criminal. That's not how laws work. Now, if he threatened her, obviously it would be a completely different story and he could be charged with a crime. However, even if her inflated, untrue, ridiculous versions of events were true, she clearly at no point said anything to indicate that he actually threatened her. That's completely false, it's complete nonsense, and she's just wasting everybody's time trying to pump up this hate hoax. Now, I believe he has also retained an attorney and they're going over options and they're possibly going to sue this woman for defamation. But other than that, the updates to this story pretty much end there. However, while I was listening to the state representative make wild claim after wild claim, reverse her story over and over again, I was looking for one of our golden fact-checking organizations to refute some of these claims that are clearly false and disprovable by eyewitness testimony and video surveillance evidence. But of course, as we previously discussed on this channel, some of the major fact-checking organizations are complete and utter garbage. If you remember, I did a response video to a Snopes video about the photos of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in front of a detention center that were clearly staged publicity photos. And Snopes, despite producing more angles to show that Ocasio-Cortez could not possibly see anything to have these reactions to from those angles, rated conservative critiques of these obvious publicity photos false anyway. So with that track record, I was expecting Snopes to butcher this story in one way or another, but somehow they outperformed my expectations for how bad a fact-checking organization would be, and they decided to fact-check a satirical article about Erica Thomas. An article with the ridiculous headline about Erica Thomas going into a Chick-fil-A and telling a Chick-fil-A employee to go back to their country. And no, I'm not joking about that. An alleged fact-checking organization thought it was more important to not discern what's true and not true in a he said, she said that's gaining national news attention. They decided that it was more important to divert their resources to fact-check a Babylon Bee article, which can be fact-checked by anybody by visiting their website, which clearly labels everything that they do satire. And the reason for fact-checking this joke article from a clearly satirical website is that some people somewhere on the internet were tweeting this out with captions that indicated that they might believe that this joke article was true. Which, by the way, if your standard all of a sudden for fact-checking satirical articles is that somebody somewhere probably believes that it's true, then there's a lot more satirical articles that you need to fact check, because every single one of these joke articles, no matter how ridiculous, have some people sharing them as if they're legitimate. For example, there was an article that said that a cannibal got arrested after eating 34 pizza delivery men that he ordered to his house. Now, even though this is clearly satire and it's a ridiculous premise for a news article, you can't have 34 people go missing delivering pizzas to your house without anybody noticing before it gets to the number 34. I still saw this article being shared on my personal timeline as if it was real. They decided to fact check this one because this one was a joke at the expense of a Democratic lawmaker, and the Babylon Bee is a conservative satire site. So not only do we have another story of a left-wing figure staging a hoax to push their own political agenda, not only do we have another story of the media running with the narrative without fact-checking it, but we also have another story that shows you that these left-wing fact-checking organizations are more left-wing than they are about fact-checking. You see, Snopes isn't interested in fact-checking the actual claims of this case because that would make the left look bad. Instead, they're going to fact-check an obvious joke as if it's a truth to make the story that the right wing is lying about this Democratic politician and not tell the actual story about her clearly and obviously lying. So Erica Thomas is an embarrassment and Snopes is trash. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. The links are in the description and some of them are pictured over here. This has been me breaking down a Snopes article and updating you on the Erica Thomas case, like 2 things in one video, completely and utterly amazing. Till next time.